Hello, my name is Adrian and today I'm going to be refuting the speech of Sarga. His claim was the benefits of switching to alternative sources of energy will outweigh the cost of abandoning fossil fuels. His three secondary claims are the use of fossil fuels has detrimental effects to the environment, unlike renewable energy, which just recycles naturally occurring resources. His second claim is the shift to renewable energy encourages growth in the economy, and his third claim is the efficiency of renewable energy sources greatly outcast the fossil fuels-based energy sources. So for his first claim, he states that the fossil fuels are not for my first claim refuting to that, I state that the fossil fuels are not avoidable with the technology we have right now because everything leads back to fossil fuels. My opponent claims that the fossil fuels are detrimental to the environment, but according to Conserve Energy for the Future, fossil fuels are the easiest thing to come by at this time. My opponent also claims that so much bad comes from fossil fuels in transportation and says that changing to electric cars is a solution. But when transportation is not the only cause of global warming, two, electric cars are supposed to be charged by plugs that plug into the wall, and unless the house that is charging this car has solar panels, they are still using fossil fuels, which are used to power the car, which power the house, which then powers the car. And three, electric cars are very expensive, and there is no public transportation that uses, all public transportation uses a ton of fossil fuels. So changing fossil fuel powered public transportation to electric alternative energy public transportation would be expensive, and it would be coming out of the tax dollars of everyone, and not everyone uses public transportation. My counterclaim for that would be fossil fuels are not avoidable with the technology we have right now because of everything that leads back to fossil fuels. So his secondary claim is is the shift to renewable energy encourages growth to economy, but these changes to alternative energy are all talk and no show. They show the consumer not the full truth and the whole change. By my opponent saying that there will be growth is false. It is a misleading statement. If all energy was changed to alternative energy, there would be a new tax on it. There is not a guarantee that everyone will want to pay this on top of all the other taxes that we have here in California. There is a claim that there will be more jobs after this shift, but this is also misleading. There are many jobs in extracting alternative energy, but then the cars that will be electric are basically computers. There are no engines, leaving mechanics out of jobs. The changes to alternate energy are all talk and no show to the consumer and do not show the whole truth about this. Fossil fuels are more economically efficient and do not need as much of the taxpayers' dollars. As explained in the opponent's speech, renewable energy is efficient to use rather than fossil fuels, but that is not correct in all aspects of this. Renewable energy is more expensive to make, and we do not have technology for it like we do for fossil fuels, and we do not have enough machines to keep it steady. According to the IER, fossil fuels are greatly cheaper to use compared to alternate energy due to the lack of technology. By not talking about the cost of all of these, my opponent misleads the audience by giving statistics that only focus on the ratios. But there is also cost of all of this, which would be coming out of the taxpayers' pockets again. Fossil fuels are more economically efficient and do not need as much of the taxpayers' dollars and as much machinery as renewable energy would. Thank you.
Right, structurally it's relatively clear. I do think that you often repeat the advocate's claim and then you introduce your response to it, and that was not inappropriate at all. It actually worked pretty well. The argument that you're making on a couple of those points is a lot clearer as a consequence. sometimes the phrasing on it is a little bit awkward. The negative terminology, for instance, got a little bit confusing in a couple of the spots that you're talking in. On the first point, you've got 3 assertions about why fossil fuels are, the easiest to use right now, and that electric cars or electric vehicles can't replace them. Basically, we got public transportation. Electric cars still need to be plugged in, and when they all end up having to use some form of fossil fuel. That's mostly asserted there. I don't doubt that it's mostly true also, but it would be helpful if you had some evidence to back that up. I like the second point where your claim basically is all talk and no show. In other words, alternative energies are full of grandiose claims that they haven't been able to follow up on, but most of what your argument talks about is really the economic viability of fossil fuels without necessarily discussing the alternatives. I don't hear any reference to any of the arguments that the advocate made about those alternatives, whether or not there is job growth, whether or not there is going to be sufficient energy on those particular kinds of projects. There's not really any analysis of the evidence and reasoning that the advocate used. We've got basically a counterclaim here suggesting that we're still, dependent on these things. I like the trade-off argument that, that's an interesting one. Hey, basically we'll just have computers on wheels and all the mechanics will disappear. Yeah, but mechanics disappear, now you need computer techs. There's always a trade-off somewhere. Yours is an asserted trade-off. They could easily assert a trade-off in response. If you had some evidence that suggested, it's not that hard to calculate. How many service stations are there? How many people make a living as a mechanic? How many people do auto repairs to internal combustion engines? Find some data like that, and then when you've got that, it's a lot easier to compare that to whatever assertion they would have to make. You're better off with that kind of response. All right, I'm trying to keep these short so we can get more people in. So let's move on.